I just want to say again, if you weren't here when I said it the first time, I did receive this game for free from the developers. So, um, while I intend and believe that I intend to give unbiased feedback, and I believe that I am giving unbiased feedback. You know, grain of salt, all that good stuff. Um, I would like now to talk about the game. Um, let's see. Art and music, spot on, absolutely amazing. There was a negative review I saw, and one of their points of negativity was that there was one track per city, and they thought that was too little, that cities should have had more variation. I couldn't disagree harder with that position. I thought that giving each city a track made each city feel like it set sort of the tone, the personality of the place, you know? And they chose the tracks well. Like, Anka felt like industrial. You know, it felt busy. Anka felt like that track could have been in Sim City and it wouldn't have felt out of place. And then the track for someplace like Hera was... It conveyed like Ghost Town. Empty, forgotten, quiet. I think all of the music was spot on. Art style, consistent and cool. Perfect for the tone of the thing. It's almost a visual novel. More gameplay than what I would be willing to call a visual novel. But it is certainly not like an intense game, and the cute, simple, artsy, sort of chaotic, energy-filled art style is perfect for this sort of like emotional journey that you go on. The important thing that I wanted to talk about was right at the very end, right when we were in Anka, so right before the end of our game, really, we got pickpocketed, right, by little Basilio. We were having a staring contest, and I succeeded. I beat him in the staring contest. I got all the white marks, all the checks, and the result was negative. The result was I got my nuts stolen. And then similarly, a similar thing happened at the very end, where we were talking to Klaus, and she invites us to run away with her. And basically, if you get all the white checks, that's you saying yes. And this may have been something the game was trying to teach me from the start, that I just didn't understand fully until the end, is that it's not necessarily a game about always succeeding in the conversation. Sometimes the conversations it's a choice that you're making. And success is yes, and failure is no. And so Isabella thought I was getting buddy-buddy with the circle just because I kept always succeeding in conversations with Marquez. And I didn't really... They denied me from the circle because I failed to get white checks with Thomas. Which could read as I chose not to influence Thomas, right? A way of playing this game that I did not think of while I was playing, or I didn't even realize it was part of the game, was that there are times where you might, as a player, want to choose to fail. All of the failures that I experienced in the game I didn't choose that. You know, I was trying to succeed in every test. But it seems like really the conversations are conversations, and you're choosing an outcome. And so the ideal deck is one that allows you that choice, which I think mine still had. At the end, I think I could have failed on purpose if I wanted to. I just didn't even consider that would be a thing I want to do. It's also very clear to me from the little that I played before and also on this playthrough, you can't do everything in one play, which is another thing I want to talk about. We finished this in about 5 hours. That was about 5 hours, and if you were to play this game, it would go faster because, of course, you're not reading everything out loud. So I can imagine that shaving 1 to 2 hours off of the total time. However, and at the $20 price point, that's not a lot of time start to finish to put into a game. However, I think it's clearly set up for multiple playthroughs. You can't achieve everything at once, and in fact, I think if you try to make your deck varied enough to handle any situation, instead what you will end up with is a deck that can't handle anything. Rather than being able to handle everything, you're unable to handle the simplest conversation. It really seems like you do need to become specific, to focus on maybe 3 symbols maximum, and really lean into a couple of mechanics of the cards. Like, I really leaned into chatter, but I could easily see like leaning into like maybe you get some observe cards so you can see what they have, and then you have a bunch of those like choose a card cards as a way to like see what your not opponent but your conversation partner is capable of, and then be able to choose cards specifically from your deck to deal with it. Like, that's another way you could play it for sure. In fact, maybe if you run enough of the pick a card cards, you could get pretty varied with your deck. I don't know. But I think it's clearly meant to play multiple times, because there were storylines that were teased. Like, there's twin brothers, and one of them was starting to talk about like he needs help running the thing, and the other brother, the pickle brother, clearly was not happy where he was. So I think maybe a storyline is getting those brothers back together. The circle storyline, obviously we didn't play out to the end. Let's see what else. I mean, it honestly felt like everyone we talked to, like the homeless guy, he probably has a storyline. And then, not to mention, we didn't ever, only once did we stop in Old Marais, and some fish dude told us about a boat. And there's 2 towns we never even got to, let alone the boat. Like, we just never got the road to there. 3, because Persery. So there's, I believe, quite a lot of story options and ways to play that add replay value to it. I know for a fact that we chose like a weird ending. Not a weird ending, but not like the basic ending. The basic ending for sure is go back to town and then find out whether or not Bartow gets dropped from the trade route, right? Like, that must be the normal ending. So yeah, I think there's absolutely replay value. Let's see. Writing. Some of the writing was hit or miss for me. I think some of the writing was very good, and I think some of the writing suffered from the nature of the gameplay, if that makes sense. Like, let's say I'm talking to someone and I pass the first check, pass the second check, and then fail. Sometimes the thing that they said when you failed seems like it would have made sense elsewhere in the conversation, like at the start maybe, but because of where you are in the conversation, it doesn't really jive with what they've already said, or the tone of where you are at in the conversation. Also, it's hard to write responses when half of the conversation is imagined, right? We are a silent protagonist. So they'll ask a question. Like at one point, Klaus asked, "Do you prefer sweetened or unsweetened matcha?" And then you do it, and she goes like, "Ah, I thought you'd say that." It's like, oh, that's kind of cute. But that's an example of it working. There are plenty of times where your response actually functionally matters to carry on the conversation, and it feels a little bit janky to like not have it actually be said, just to have the person respond, because unlike most silent protagonist games, we're not even choosing like we are silent, you know. We don't even choose a response in text based, you know. We just don't say anything. So for the most part though, I would say the writing is good. For the most part, I think the writing is good. Mechanics wise, I'd really have to do another playthrough and try something other than chatter. I would almost say chatter felt like it broke the mechanics of the game. But consider it did take me about 4 expeditions in order to set the deck up that way. Like, it took me most of the game in order to break it. So by the time it was broken, there's not really a lot of like wiggle room left. Really all you're doing is finishing off quests. And I think that's a pretty good place. It didn't feel cheap to me that I was able to breeze through those conversations at the end. It felt earned. Like I had specialized deeply and been rewarded. Fatigue also serves to sort of fatigue's weird for me in this game, because like those times where we spent up until day 50 like driving around, really the last like 2 or 3 places we visited didn't matter, because we're going to fail those conversations almost 100% of the time, just because there's so much fatigue in our deck and we didn't have the tools to deal with it. Now maybe a deck that runs more of those like draw a whole new hand of cards would be better at dealing with fatigue, but other than that, I don't know how you would. And that's kind of a weird place to me, because it almost incentivizes you to just end your trip early, you know, go back on like day 30, because anything you do past then is just going to be failure anyway, you know. There's another thing that I saw happen while a friend was playing that I kind of want to address, is like you can get desynced with like timing wise if you don't. Sometimes it's difficult to either go with a caravan, or like places will have those events and you want to get to them on time. Sometimes you get out of sync with those things in a way where it becomes impossible to get back on track. Like if you show up to a place early, there's no option to say like, well, just sleep in my car for 4 days until I'm back on track. You have to go to another place that's 2 days away and then drive back if you want to be 4 days later. But that's not always an option depending on where you are. So I would really like an option, maybe something like rest for 5 days, remove a fatigue, and it forwards time. The trade-off is you're losing time, but you're also helping your deck, or make it 7 days or something more punishing time-wise, where it becomes like, okay, yeah, I have too much fatigue in my deck, so there's not really a point to keep going, but I have 20 days left. So, I don't know. Some sort of mechanic to alleviate that feeling and to maybe help sync up timings on getting to places or getting behind with the caravan I think I would appreciate. Love the dog. Dog was great. I love that everything matches with the dog. That's pretty fun too.